Yo guys, what is up? Max here in Diablo 4 video, and today we're talking about some of the changes that Blizzard just made to the Barbarian in their most recent hotfix, as well as changes to Dungeon XP. Yes, they did nerf the Dungeon XP video that I put out like a few days ago for the Runes of Eridu. As well as we've got to talk about a new way to play Whirlwind. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Let's get right into it. So this hotfix released 20 minutes ago, and to start us off, they nerfed the Eridu farm. That farm was giving millions of experience an hour. I was clocking in at around like 18 to 20 mil experience an hour, and they nerfed that, so it's not spawning nearly as many elites. And they also made a particular note that said we are standardizing the density of elite monsters that spawn in dungeons to ensure that no particular dungeon is clearly more efficient to run through than others. There's still going to be dungeons that are slightly better than others, and I'm going to go out and go test that. But just note that a lot of the dungeons should feel more fair to run compared to others, so go out and find the ones that you enjoyed the layout of the most. I'll probably still have out a video on which dungeons I prefer now that Eridu is nerfed, but that was the first big change. The next big change is to the Barbarian, and it comes with the legendary aspect changes. First off, they fixed an issue where the damage bonus from the Edgemaster's aspect was incorrectly reapplied to Whirlwind when a shout was used. You could spin while you were spinning. You could keep proccing your shouts and keep spinning and like infinitely stacking the Edgemaster's aspect. They also resolved an issue relating to the aspect of Berserk Ripping and Barbarian's two-handed sword expertise. They're allowing players to deal unintended amounts of damage. I think this might have to do with the amount of bleed damage that the Barbarian was putting out, which you could get to be pretty ridiculous. So they also have enabled both of these aspects and fixed them. So right as they put out those changes, I was in the middle of recording a two-handed bludgeoning whirlwind testing video because there are some real big upsides to using a two-handed bludgeoning weapon versus using a two-handed slashing weapon. Now that those aspects, the Edgemasters and the Berserk Ripping, are enabled, I need to do some more testing, which I will be currently doing on twitch.tv/Moxie live if you want to come see. But I want to talk to you real quick about why using a two-handed bludgeoning weapon for Whirlwind is actually so good. So there's a few cool things that you can do when you're using a bludgeoning weapon for Whirlwind. The first is you get to take advantage of the two-handed mace expertise, which gives you increased critical strike damage to stunned and vulnerable enemies while berserking, and you can get fury when you damage enemies while berserking. Both things are really, really nice. But the really nice thing is it allows us to use these two nodes in the passive skill tree. These nodes being Wallop, you deal increased damage to vulnerable enemies or stunned enemies when using a bludgeoning weapon, and it allows us to use Concussion. When we lucky hit, we have a 45% chance to stun enemies. And these two ways, that way to stun enemies plus the ground stomp, which if you have enough fury gen, you can use, gives us guaranteed stuns on elites and guaranteed stun on packs. And what those stuns allow us to do is use the stun multiplier. Now, I originally started messing around with this because they disabled the Edgemaster's aspect, which is what I was using on my amulet before, but the stun multiplier is massive, and we can guarantee it, and we can use it on whole packs. And when I've been using a stun multiplier, as well as ground stomp plus a bludgeoning weapon, I've been hitting for millions of damage on Whirlwind, which I was never hitting when I was using a slashing weapon. And one of the big changes with using a bludgeoning weapon is we also can no longer use Furious Whirlwind. Now, Furious Whirlwind, it only works when you're using a slashing weapon. It gives us bleed damage. However, when we're using a bludgeoning weapon, we have to use Violent Whirlwind. Now, there are two downsides that come with the massive damage increase that we get while using these stun multipliers, while using Violent Whirlwind. Those two big downsides are, one, you cannot use the Rage of Haragoth chest piece anymore. The Rage of Haragoth chest piece only works with natural bleeds. And when I mean natural bleeds, is bleeds that inherently inflict bleed. So for example, if we're using Furious Whirlwind, Whirlwind now bleeds enemies, and Rage of Haragoth will reset its cooldown or reset your cooldowns when you're using this. However, if you're not using Furious Whirlwind and you're using additive or like added bleed damage, such as the two-handed sword expertise, Rage of Haragoth will not actually reset its cooldown. So we have lower shout up times on our build when we're using two-handed bludgeoning weapons. The other potential downside, which I've gone out and tested, is the Disembowel Glyph. Disembowel Glyph reads when you kill a bleeding enemy, you have a chance to reduce the cooldowns of your non-ultimate active cooldowns by 1 second. This does work with the additive bleed from the two-handed sword expertise. So the way that I've been playing Whirlwind currently is I'm using bludgeoning weapons with stun damage multipliers, and I've basically gotten rid of the Haragoth, and I'm still able to keep decent shout uptimes while still putting out like ridiculous damage. And we can also take advantage of getting +2 or +3s into our shout cooldowns or our shouts by using a different chess piece. Now that the Edgemaster and the Berserk ripping aspect are enabled, I'm going to need to do some significant testing and compare and contrast using a bludgeoning whirlwind versus using a slashing whirlwind, and I will have an updated guide for my whirlwind video once I hit level 90 and I've done enough testing, because I'm really curious in terms of like nightmare clear speed, bossing, and all that stuff, which one wins out more, using a bludgeoning non-bleed focused or using a slashing bleed focused whirlwind build. And I will have those updates and results later on YouTube, but I will also be testing them live on twitch.tv/Moxie, which I am live right now. Guys, that is going to do it for the video. Just know that the Barbarian aspects are re-enabled, and there are some cool new ways to mess around with Whirlwind, mainly being you can now use bludgeoning weapons and using stun multipliers as a different way. If you didn't like the bleed version before, just note you might have a little bit more trouble keeping up your shout cooldowns. That is it for the video, guys. I will catch y'all in the next one. Take care. Peace.